Good afternoon. First of all, I want to start off with some acknowledgments. Obviously, as we move forward in reorganizing our service delivery model, a number of people have been integral in helping us redefine how we deliver service by way of the Detroit Police Department. I want to start off parenthetically noting that the overarching goal of everything we do is to have more full-duty sworn police officers actively out patrolling in the city of Detroit. The second parenthetical note that I definitely need to make, and I regret that it was reported completely inaccurately, policing is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year job. No police precinct or district will ever be closed. What we are talking about is a service delivery model and what services will be provided after 4 p.m. Peak hours for calls for service, criminal activity are typically from the hours of 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. It's incumbent upon us in an era of shrinking resources, and what we have provided to you today is a graph that shows where our manpower was in 2002 and where it is today. But ostensibly, we're about 1,200 to 1,300 fewer resources than we had really just over 5 years ago. With that backdrop, for us to continue to try to do police work the same way, under the same methodology, with fewer resources, is simply ludicrous. It would not be wise, and we are not giving our citizens the maximum return on their investment relative to their tax dollars. This has not happened in a vacuum. About a year and a half ago, through our training funds, we employed a Six Sigma black belt coordinator to work with us from a process improvement standpoint to really take a look at where there are inefficiencies in how we deploy our personnel. And you'll get some sidebar with Mr. Jim Wilkins, who helped us through this iterative process. I also want to note, as we go forward, these are not the last changes we'll make in the Detroit Police Department. For us to be effective, for us to be efficient, for us to utilize our resources appropriately, we will continue to find ways to put more sworn resources out into active policing. I'd like to acknowledge President Kimberly Jackson, the Community Relations President from Northeastern District, who's here. She'd raise her hand. Commissioner Donnell White, who's the chair of the Board of Police Commissioners, and Commissioner Jerome Warfield. And now I will start into my formal remarks that hopefully will outline what we anticipate doing, what we will be doing, and some of the desired outcomes. Again, it must be noted, all precincts and all districts are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. As a matter of fact, our commitment to precincts and the precinct format and migrating toward that is so strong that our opening of the second precinct is still on track, and we're still on track to open a fifth precinct. We are still in the process of finding capital to look for an eighth precinct. So moving to a precinct format is still our overarching goal. The greater need in Detroit is for police officers to be actively patrolling our communities. Again, with diminishing resources, the more officers that I have that are not fully deployed into actively policing our communities, it is not the most wise allocation of our resources. There is a more efficient and effective way to handle reporting of non-emergency crimes and other administrative duties. You have heard the term virtual precinct. Virtual precinct is a methodology. It is a concept. What we will be doing is utilizing our telephone crime reporting unit, fully staffing it so that during the off hours for service to the community or during peak call for service hours, which is 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, we will be utilizing that call center to deal with non-emergency calls for service. It will be fully staffed to the extent that we have done the research as to how many reports we do a day, so we will make sure that we have enough personnel there. Now you may ask, with shrinking personnel, who will be there? we have a number of restricted duty police officers who are not full duty. We have them scattered across the precinct. Contractually, I have the ability as chief that when an officer is in a restricted duty position, they can work wherever we need them in the department. As opposed to have them spreading out and not getting economies of scale, it is much more efficient for us to leverage the existing telephone crime reporting unit mechanism to fully staff it to take all of our reports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What this will do is also offer additional convenience to our citizens. Because of telephone crime reporting unit being fully staffed, a lot of the need for a citizen to come into a precinct to do a report, where in a lot of instances at our busier precincts, our staff get overburdened, we can spread the workload out amongst a smaller group of people, but we can make sure that it is monitored appropriately and we have adequate personnel to deal with that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is a convenience. In times where transportation is tough, it's difficult for people to move. What we want to make sure is that when a citizen picks up a telephone, they have adequate service relative to their problem. The construct of sending police to non-emergency type situations, unfortunately, we can do no more. We don't have the resources available to do that. With the redeployment and more officers on the street, this will enable the Detroit Police Department to have more officers patrolling our communities. What we anticipate is having minimally 100 to 150 additional sworn police officers available to be deployed in the field. This is significant. We're doing this without adding one penny to the budget by doing so, but by simply re-engineering the way we do business. Beginning on January 9th, what we are going to do, we are not rolling this out citywide. The reason why we are here at the Northeast District is we will pilot it for 28 days here, starting Monday, January 9th, 2011. So the limited service from 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. will be starting here at the Northeast District. After 28 days, which would allow us to work out the kinks, then we will be fully deploying this methodology citywide on February 6, 2012. This will give us an opportunity through public access channels and a number of different mediums, including yours, to get appropriate information out citywide so citizens will understand definitively who they talk to when they do not have a Detroit police officer coming to their door. We have done a disservice to our community by spreading ourselves thin, giving citizens the belief that we will respond to things that are not an emergency. We have to be transparent, we have to be honest, and we have to improve our service delivery model. This reorganization has other aspects to it also that we are working to fully implement by February 6, 2012. A part of that deals with centralization of how we deliver our investigative services throughout the city. I acknowledge change is difficult, but status quo will not get us where we need to go relative to being an efficient police agency. Again, we have not done this in a vacuum. We paid a visit to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Chief Ed Flynn was kind enough to host us, to take us through their virtual precinct methodology, to talk about different deployments. This is not unique to the city of Detroit. There are challenges for staffing across the United States of America relative to sworn ranks. So we have an obligation. We would be derelict in our duty if we did not take this process. It is timely for us to do this at a time where we talk about the city's fiscal challenges, but in reality, this process has been ongoing for us, and we're at the point where we're ready for implementation. Outcome metric, what we're looking for success. Number one, and overall, is for those brave men and women that are overtaxed out there answering a tremendous amount of calls for service, getting them more police officers out there to assist them, back them up, and work side by side with them. Second overall outcome metric and goal is ensuring that our visitors, our residents, and those that would come to Detroit to do business We have maximized every resource we have relative to our sworn deployment. I want to say lastly and most importantly, I thank Mayor Bing for his support of public safety, support of us as a police department, allowing us to take this opportunity to re-engineer and really make history on how we deliver service to the citizens of the city of Detroit. To my officers, I want to let them know how much I appreciate what they have done in what would be considered a resource-strapped environment. We may not agree on everything that we do, but I anticipate that this leadership, that this community would rally around us and understand that at the end of the day, what's the most important for us is getting more sworn Detroit police officers out in the community doing police work. With that, we'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Does this affect your Inside Out program, or will that still
It will to a certain extent. A lot of the positions that we're eliminating, and I'll give you some examples, if you bear with me for a moment, some of the types of jobs that we are either centralizing or eliminating at the precinct level because we need some efficiency in how we do these jobs. Report clerks. Obviously, we mitigate the need for report clerks if we have a mechanism to take reports by phone. Desk clerk, what we call a lean operator or a law enforcement information network operator, building maintenance officer, timekeeping officers, property officer, security officer. With the ensuing events with the 6th and 8th precinct, you notice the magnetometers. That takes staffing of 2 police officers per shift for us to continue to provide the service level for 24 hours. All of these are sworn resources that if we don't rededicate and repurpose some of the work that we do, we don't realize these talented men and women out in the community where they need to be identifying criminals, stopping crime from happening in the first place, and being available to back each other up. Reduction in administrative staff, we have to continue to do that. It's not going to be easy. We will make some mistakes along the way. But again, we will tweak, we will listen to concerns, our officers' concerns. We are very, very sensitive to. Change is scary, and it's incumbent upon this leadership team to show leadership, to help manage and manipulate our way through this change process and assure our officers that our overriding goal is to make sure that at the end of their shift, they come home safely.
Chief Godbee, how has Dr. Helling's broken windows model kind of helped you frame what you're doing?
George is a tremendous resource from the standpoint of he has operational knowledge. He has seen through to success some very appropriate implementations of policing in a manner that pays attention to the small things, the details. The public order crimes, restoring order in public places. But the only way you can do that, Alexis, is you have to have free resources to do that. If the resources are stuck in a building, how can I deploy them to problem areas so we can engage constructively in problem-solving policing? So all of this nicely fits together in that overlay to make sure that we have the resource available to dedicate to those areas. There's an additional enhancement that we're working on for the citizens' convenience. Also, we are looking at a technology through a company called Cop Logic that will allow some limited online police reporting also for some low-level crimes. Again, these things, they take down the weight of how much traffic we have in our buildings, how we trap our officers inside dealing with those things, and how we release that time to make it more productive for our citizens. We hope to have that implementation in the next 3 to 6 months. Our precinct is a safe haven. As you go to a number of different surrounding police agencies, they will have limited staffing. Very trained, talented individuals that can assist a person in pointing them in the right direction. Even to the extent if the situation calls for me to have an officer come to the station to deal with them, I would rather do that than have that officer just sitting there like the Maytag repair person waiting for something to happen. So we get economies of scale by doing this. So when the citizen comes here, it is more efficient for me to call an officer off the street to deal with them or deal with their emergency situation, as opposed to have them just waiting here, especially on midnights. Assistant Chief Logan, who kind of spearheaded and pushed us into looking at these methodologies, we did some polling and looked at reporting across the city on midnights. Remember, 2 report clerks per precinct district citywide, maybe about two reports a night. That's a huge waste of talent and resource to have sitting waiting on midnights. So we have to repurpose these things. So the service, and as you'll notice in the live, we have a phone bank set up. So for those hours that we don't have report clerks that are here to take your report, there's a kiosk there where if you make it here and need to make the report, you can pick up the phone. It'll take you directly to telephone crime reporting unit, so you can still make your report.
And 2 reports per
2 report clerks
report.
per precinct, per shift.
So when you did the study, was it 2 reports per clerk that they were?
No, it was, I'll put it this way. For an 8-hour shift,
Yeah.
1 or 2 reports in the precinct on midnights.
Per shift.
Per shift. Very, very minimal traffic on midnights. But again, that was a very short window of time. I'm sure there are extremes on both ends depending on what's going on. But for the most part, we have a lot of downtime on the inside that we're not leveraging the full duty personnel to the extent that we need to. We're not a 4,000, 5,000 person police department anymore. We will not be anytime in the near future.
Sir, I hear people on the street, they heard reports earlier that there'd be 100 policemen laid off. They've heard all the financial problems of the city. They heard what you say are the inaccurate reports now, that there'll be the precincts closed for some time. You've kind of said it throughout and on throughout the conference, but what would you say to people in the public who are afraid that the city's going broke and there's just going to be much less police presence for them now?
What we're doing, we're fixing structurally what's wrong with the police department. We have inefficiencies in how we utilize our personnel. So what I would assure the citizens is, through my tenure as chief of police, we have continued to look at innovative ways to put more police officers out into active policing. We will continue to do so. As it goes to layoffs, you are correct. 108 layoff notices are in preparation and will be issued on January 23rd, 2012, with a layoff date 30 days from there. What we are working on relative to that is with the city's impending financial difficulties, which are well chronicled. We are fortunate to have a mechanism by which we can ask the Department of Justice for an adjustment in 2 hiring grants that we have. One from 2009, which we have hired 50 police officers from. One from 2011, which we were just granted, yet we have not expended yet. What we're asking is a change of purposing of that grant from a hiring grant to a retention grant, which is a permissible request within the guidelines. We have the documentation to support the city's financial position. We will be submitting it to the Department of Justice, the COPS office, Community-Oriented Policing Office, and we anticipate that we will get a positive response on that. I cannot be presumptuous and say 100% that they will, but I think the city's financial situation has been very well chronicled. The governor's financial review team starting to define the fact that we are in financial distress. All of the triggers are there that I'm very confident that we can demonstrate the financial need for an adjustment in that grant.
You mentioned online reporting.
Yes, sir.
And you said they should be low-level reports.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give an example of what low-level is and what citizens should stay away from in terms of reporting online?
Well, we will give the parameters, but I'll give you some very vivid examples. You have a B&E of your garage. Your lawnmower is taken and maybe a bicycle. What we would allow in that iteration is for a person to make that report online. The solvability of it may be very low. So to have a person come, sit in a lobby, wait to be serviced, when we can provide a service online, it will be much more efficient and effective, not only for the department, but for the citizen, because in most instances, that citizen simply needs a incident number so that they can report the incident to their insurance company.
Chief, how does it save money by having detectives go all into one central location. And one of the things that was brought up to me is their concerns that the detectives won't know the neighborhoods which they're assigned. How does that save money, and how do you address those?
Well, it's not necessarily saving money. It's creating greater efficiency. For every individual investigative entity, you have administrative tasks and administrative personnel that accompany that. So what we call as detectives that work in the pits, all of those folks assigned to those individual entities do not work in the pits as active detectives. So by centralization, we eliminate a number of the redundancies, and we have more people available to actually investigate crime. And then we have to do some triaging. There are some things that the solvability factors are such that, again, we have to be honest with our public, tell them where we are with it, what we will investigate, prioritize it, and really start to chop down that tree and do a drill down. But Deputy Chief Paul Wells and Commander Bob Ennis, who have a wealth of investigative knowledge, they are, the principal architects of that restructure, and I trust their leadership in pushing us to where we need to do it. Again, change is not easy. In my preference, George, I love to keep everything the way it is. It keeps everybody happy, pushes nobody out of their comfort zone. But the reality is, if we remain status quo, we are in trouble. I'll give you a last note on that. If you look at our funding levels for the police department over the past 5 or 6 years, I mean, we have pretty much held the line within 10, 15% of what we're budgeted for. But with rising employee costs, you get fewer and fewer and fewer officers at the end of the day. So until we accomplish the structural changes, which the mayor is actively negotiating, I think very well with our unions, both sworn and not sworn, until we get those structural changes, George, we have to make fundamental structural change to our delivery of service because, again, I will not realize the numbers in the past. I have even smaller numbers than my predecessor had just in 2009. I'm about 200 officers fewer than Chief Warren Evans had. So every iteration of budget, until we make structural change and change our service delivery model, we are going to continue to suffer if we don't make the tough decisions that we're making today relative to changing how we structure this police department.
Chief, did you have to run any of these changes of reorganization through the monitor consent decree?
I mean, as a courtesy, I do, not because I have to. But I think it's important for him conceptually to understand what our resource challenges are. But we have not, nor will we ever make resource challenges an excuse for consent judgment compliance. Consent judgment compliance for me is the practice of us following our own policy. And I'm glad you brought that up. We are 100% compliant in phase 1 of the consent judgments for the second consecutive quarter, which is the ninth reporting for the 9th quarter. We are 80% compliant phase 2. That is significant and it is tremendous, and that is a credit not only to this command staff and leadership, but it is also part and parcel reflective of what these men and women do every day, because conditions of confinement, use of force reporting, all these things that the men and women of this department have bought into and are following policy and conducting themselves under difficult circumstances are netting the city some tremendous gains. The monitor costs us $91,000 a month. So there's a practical aspect also to us getting into compliance sooner rather than later.
Any more questions? If not, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you very much.